Hello and welcome to the Coaching Crowd podcast with me, Zoe Hawkins, and my friend and co-host Jo Wheatley.
Hi, everybody. Today we're talking to you about coaching and parenting. We have never talked about this before on our podcast, but both Zoe and I are parents to our wonderful children, and coaching has undoubtedly impacted the way that we parent. And sometimes it's felt like a survival strategy as a parent. So we also know that people that come and do our coaching qualifications often share how they've come to do the coaching qualification from a career lens as an exit strategy from their corporate role or something they've always, they were meant to do. And what surprises them is how much their coaching knowledge and how they've developed the skills they've developed, the mindset that they've developed has helped them in other aspects of their life. And for many of them, that has been in their role as a mum, a dad, and, a family member or in a caring role. So we thought we would shine a light on that today.
Do you know, the first place that I'm taken to when I think about this topic isn't actually about my parenting. It's about me as a parent. And I think it's fairly universal that all parents at times during their parenting journey will find periods of time hard, whether that is on their own capacity when they're really tired or whether it is the phase of development that their child is going through. I remember saying very early on in parenting is like they find all your triggers, these little children. So we're in a neurodivergent household, so we had that lens as well. So one classic example, if I'm like lovingly preparing tea and I put that on the table, I'm not eating that. That's disgusting. But even as like a toddler, my toddler would like take my lovingly prepared spaghetti bolognese, pick it up and turn it upside down and throw it on the floor. Now it's very easy in those moments to step into your trigger and react to yourself. And I think what coaching has enabled me to do as a parent, not always because I'm no angel, I'm no perfect parent, and nobody is, and I don't believe anybody can be, but it helps me to catch myself, hopefully more often than not, and check out, hang on a minute, this is about me. This is about me and my triggers, and what do I need to learn in this moment to be able to get back into a resourced place to be a better parent than perhaps the one that I would be if I was reacting from my triggers. So, that for me comes from the self-awareness that coaching gives you, the ability to connect with what is a thought and what is a reality, and how my thoughts are connected to my emotions and are connected to my behavior. Like the understanding of that cycle helps me, hopefully more often than not, to just pause and think, is this how I want to be? And if it isn't, I have the ability to reflect on my behavior and check in of like, I was probably overdoing it there. And I've apologized to my children on many, many occasions for not being the parent that they probably needed me to be in those moments of high stress and tension.
Yeah. It's hard to know how I would be as a parent if I hadn't trained to be a coach.
It kind of scares me if I think about that.
So, I think one of the things that a lot of people think about when they think about parenting is they think about being a role model. And whilst that is flawed in so many ways, I think we all have a little bit of that, like we're wanting to be able to demonstrate like how to be. And we know that our children are constantly watching us consciously or unconsciously, and they are noticing the things that we do, how we respond to other people. They notice how we talk about ourselves. They notice, how, what we think about our self-image, what we're eating, what we're drinking, like how we express love to other people, how we, as you were saying, like how we forgive, do we forgive or not? And so I think for me, coaching, one of the fundamental things is I think coaching is about change and that change is about possibility. And so I think when things aren't going very smoothly, there's tension, in a household between two people or everybody, or you know that that's a temporary thing. And I think coaching has also given me, and therefore given my children, because I'm able to demonstrate it more than I would have if I hadn't trained as a coach, is I'm able to identify and articulate, as you were saying, Zoe, how I think, like what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, and is that how I want it to be? Am I behaving in the way I want to or not? And the fact I can articulate it, I think, has helped my children to be able to do that too, in a way that they wouldn't have been able to, or is maybe a little bit different even to their peers, or their, like, the natural kind of like age piece. And I think that helps them to understand themselves a little bit more, and also to get their needs met.
I think there's those times when things don't go smoothly, but there's also the times like what is like just the essence of parenting. And as you said, like how would I be as a parent if I didn't have coaching versus how am I as a parent now that I do? One of the things I think that I notice in parenting now that I have coaching is how I handle like the everyday. So, like the stories, if your child comes back from school and they're recounting perhaps a falling out that they've had, or a challenge they might be having with their teacher, or the fact they don't like something. The old me would have just tried to provide solutions and been like, oh, you should try this, or have you tried that? And why don't you do this? Or don't worry about it. It's okay. Like I would just rescue my children from those situations. Whereas I think as a coach, I'm much more likely to be asking questions, to be able to be really curious about what is that about and how come that's happening and how do they feel about that and what do they think about that and what do they want to do about that. And I think what that approach does over perhaps how I may have been is it helps to encourage their own growth mindset and their own ability to figure things out. And of course, I am there to make suggestions. Like as a parent, I'm not going to leave my child like I don't know what to do. Okay. And then I'm going to keep coaching. No, there's lots of different roles you play as a parent, but there is a role that I play as a coach, which is to help them to really explore their own thoughts and feelings without me necessarily dismissing them or ignoring them or just, not paying attention to what is going on beneath the surface of those stories.
I've just remembered that I was on the side of a football training pitch last night, and we're having conversations about children because we're watching our kids play football. And I was recounting somehow, I was recounting about how my children learnt to ride a bike. And I think everybody was sharing their different strategies, one of those random conversations. And what happened for us is that my children, both of them different ages, 4 years apart, they were trying to ride the bike, and they were, not getting started, frightened to get started, or they'd start and then they sort of go, fall to the side. And when I then had the conversation with them, I said, right, this time I want you to be saying out loud, I can do this. And then I was saying the affirmation, both of them, like magic, as soon as they started saying that they could do it whilst they were doing it, they rode. And then as soon as they had those few seconds of proving to themselves that they could do it, they didn't need the affirmation anymore. And they rode, far enough for them then to develop the confidence that they can do this, and a bit of practice, and they would be able to do it well. And I'll always really have that as an anchor, I suppose, in my own mind, as that evidence of the difference that, the internal messaging gives, that beliefs work of, when they're falling and they're starting out and they're thinking, I can't do this, I can't do this. What if I fall? What if I fall? Which is an articulation of I'm going to fall. It's not safe for me. And shifting to consciously articulating the positive belief, it made the difference.
Yeah. I think what you're touching on there is the emotions as well. We've done a few podcasts on emotions and the conversations we have about them. And the other night, my son, he's got a cross country competition coming up. He's never done cross country before. It's something they do as a whole school. And he's drifting on. It should be bedtime. His best questions come at bedtime, as most children. And he says, I'm feeling a little bit anxious about the cross country, which in itself I'm really proud of, because I think in that moment as a parent, like, oh, I've done something good here. Like my child's able to connect with the fact that they are feeling something and they're able to share it. And again, instead of just being like, oh, it's nothing to worry about, don't worry about it. I was like, oh, what what's that about for you? And we had this whole conversation about his feelings of anxiety. And I also asked, like, what else are you feeling? And he's like, I don't know. And in between this, he's trying to stick his fingers in the light socket and everything else to do with bedtime. But he also said, oh, I'm maybe a little bit excited, you know, and then he was talking about how he was worried about getting injured. And then we were able to talk about, well, if you were to get injured, how would you handle that? And what would you do? And he would say, well, I'd miss football and some of the sports I really enjoy, and that would be a really bad thing. And we just got to a point where, like, well, you know, if it happened and you got injured, it would be a bad thing, and that's okay because you won't be injured forever. You know, we was kind of talking it through, and then, you know, he was fine. But it's very easy to sometimes forget the skills that coaching brings. It just gives you that ability to be present with your children, you know, and be present with them in their emotions and in their thoughts. And you don't have to fix it all the time, but just being a safe person for them to open up to and talk to. Coaching skills really help with that.
Yeah, I was just thinking about how I think when you train to be a coach, there is also this focus on needs, which includes your own needs. Because when you train to be a coach, you've really got to, you're learning about yourself, your needs, and, you know, doing that self work. And as a parent, it can be very easy to lose yourself, be focused on everybody else's needs. That, you know, your children are in your care, you're responsible for them. It's, you know, it's a lot. And a lot of parents work as well, very busy lives, and you do kind of you getting through the day. But I think the coaching training really helps you to understand the importance of being able to sustain yourself and to be able to stay in contact with yourself. And I think maybe if I hadn't have done coaching training, I probably wouldn't look after myself in the same way as I do now. So of course we, you know, that we sacrifice ourselves in different ways at different times. You know, of course I do that, but also I do regularly check in with myself. You know, just quietly in my own mind, like how am I doing?
Mm.
Um, you know, what do I need? I'm aware that if I'm not looking after myself, I'm going to be probably more short-tempered with my children, you know, less tolerant of things. And of course, I still do that anyway. But I'm more aware of it and I'm more active in it. And I think it's really important that children see us looking after ourselves, because it says that it tells them that's an important thing to be able to do.
Mm.
I think what else coaching helps with it, or certainly, and I think I've said this on podcasts before, is my children will reflect coaching tools and techniques back to me. I'm not quite sure how they've picked these things up. I must have told them about them in different, you know, in different conversations around it, and that is it's great because isn't parenting is like we are trying to make ourselves redundant, aren't we? And so, you know, in supporting our children to develop life skills and that their own sense of identity. And so, you know, the reflections around, I mean, I'll give an obvious example. It's a bit of a flippant one, really, but I don't eat seafood. And my children will say to me every so often, but fairly regularly, isn't that just a belief that you've got? When was the last time that you tried seafood, Mum? Well, you know, if you're a coach and you really, you know, you talk about beliefs, perhaps this is a belief that you could overcome. And then I'll say, I don't really want to overcome that belief. I'm focused on some other things. So, but what's really nice is being able to have those kind of conversations. So it means that we can talk about beliefs in other contexts too, because it's a language or a thing that we have a shared understanding of.
Mm. When you were talking about self-care, the term that came to my mind is something we hear a lot is about mum guilt or
Mm.
dad guilt or nan guilt or whichever kind of role you're playing. And I can safely say that's not something I experience. There have been times in my parenting journey where I have experienced that, but I do not feel guilty for looking after myself or taking a break or doing these things. And the reason why is because I am able to connect in with what beliefs I have about parenting, what beliefs I have about myself as a parenting, what you were saying about my needs and my emotions, and also the beliefs and expectations that I have of there's, my support circle, so my husband and grandparents and things like that. And that helps me to be a parent. It helps me to parent well. So if the irony sometimes about mum guilt is that you do the thing anyway. So let's just say, or dad guilt, you're booking yourself a weekend away because you haven't had a break for a really long time from work or from parenting, and your friends are going away. And so you book the weekend, and the thing you experience whilst you're away is this mum guilt. And it's like, well, if you didn't have to have the mum guilt, you could go away and you could enjoy the experience without the mum guilt, because you're going to be there anyway. So you're going to be there and be guilty, or be there and not feel guilty. And so I think coaching skills can really help you to understand your own emotions and what's going on there. And what do you need to be able to not feel guilty? It may be reassurance from, a loved one. It may be something else, but it really helps you to understand, what is this experience for me? Why am I experiencing that? And how can I, achieve what I want instead? Which in that example is to be able to go away and have fun and trust that, my children are loved and cared for in a way that I would want them to be. So that's not maybe always possible for everybody, but I think in an example of whatever emotions you may experience through your journey of parenting, really being able to understand those to a point where you can connect with your own needs to be able to show up as the parent that you want to be.
Mm. I think coaching has, learning about coaching and training to be a coach, it really helped me to identify my values. So what is it that's uniquely me? These combination of values that really drive me, and that are things that give me joy, that light me up. And adventure is one of those values that I discovered. And training as a coach has really been a core part of increasing my confidence in life, confidence in who I am, in my capability, in how I can make the best of my life. And like we said earlier, my children see that, and they also know, like, we talk about, like, what are the values that we have as individuals? What are our family values? So it's not just the rules of our family, if you like every family has a set of rules that are often they're unspoken, aren't they? And they're sort of open to interpretation, but actually being able to talk about what they are and why they're important to us, and how that relates to, lifelong endeavors, I suppose. And so it also relates to emotions. So, when our children understand the things that are uniquely important to them, it helps them to understand their emotional responses to things. So, for example, if they see something happen that is unjust, then they will often have a very strong emotional reaction to that and want to do something about it. I was talking to somebody that I know who is a coach, and they were talking about how there's a value around justice in their family, and one of their children in school overheard one of the other children being there was like racist comments being made, and they tried to intervene, but they went straight to the head of year and said, this has happened, this isn't right, you need to do something about it. And then they went home and spoke to the parents, and it talked about what had happened. The parents spoke to the school, and they understood why they had taken the action, why it felt wrong, and they were clear that they would need to take some action on it, because of that feeling, because of the value. And it enabled them ultimately to have an outcome that felt more just. And the head of year spoke to the parents and said, how proud they must be that that their child had these clear values, rules in life, and that they had the confidence to be able to do something with them. So I think coaching can often take people and children from confusion to clarity. And growing up can be a very say growing up, we're still growing up as adults, aren't we? But, childhood, teenage years, we know can be very confusing. It's all about identity, working out, who am I? There's a lot of, people experience rejection in relationships, and, all sorts of elements around identity. And I think having And awareness of coaching skills and mindsets can offer some reassurance and some clarity to what can
Yeah.
be a turbulent time.
Yeah. And, I think hopefully what we've shared in this podcast today is it's not about being a perfect parent. It's a blessing and a curse having coaching skills in the way that you and I do, Joe, haven't we? We've sat down before sometimes, we're head in our hands and just thought, like, we should be able to find a better way through this. Those are in the times when it's particularly stressful, particularly fraught, or our children are going through something particularly turbulent, and we're feeling it, and the family's feeling it. We aren't perfect all the time. We make mistakes as a parent, 100%. Will our children grow up with unhelpful and limiting beliefs because of the way that we've raised them? Yes, 100%. That's normal. So it's not about, doing coaching skills to become the perfect parent, but it's about having more strategies and more tools to be able to draw on through your parenting journey, to help everybody feel a little bit more balanced or in control, or whatever those things are. They are genuinely helpful to you as a parent and to your children navigating life. And you don't have to have any other reason to do a coaching training. You could come on purely for that. And there are many people who will go on to become a parent coach, because of the skills that they had and the life experience that they've gained. But if that's not your reason for coaching, know that that is a wonderful bonus when you do come. And if you have children or you have a caring role, that coaching is something that can really help you in that journey as well.
So if you want to find out more about which level of course would be a good fit for you, come and do our short quiz, which is mycoachingcourse.com.